Okay, for page 10, we're going to be evaluating / writing equations of piecewise functions. This is going to be the second sheet I gave you today, so go ahead and cut it out along the edges. Pause the video now if you need to. And then paste it into your notebook. There's nothing else that we're going to write on this page except for this sheet, so it's going to take up the whole piece of paper, and that's fine. And so we're going to be evaluating piecewise functions. Evaluating means finding the answers. And so what we want to do is we've been given a graph here. And so it's called h of x. That's the name of this graph. The graph consists of a horizontal line, a constant. It consists of a parabola for only pieces of it. And it consists of a line here that has a negative slope. So there's three pieces. This is a piecewise function because it has three pieces, a constant, a parabola, and then a diagonal line. But all three of these put together creates a function, and it's called a piecewise function. And in this case, it's named h of x. So I want to use this function to find some values for h. So letter A, it says h of -6. Well, this means when x equals -6, what is the y value? Because that's what h of x really is, are a bunch of y values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here on my graph, and I'm going to go to x equals -6. I'm going to look at what the y value is. Well, for this constant function, the y value is 1. So therefore, h of -6 is equal to 1. Then, for letter B, if you want to try this yourself, you can go ahead and pause and see if you can continue. For letter B, I go to -2. You have two options here. You have one here at 4, and you have a y value here at 1. Well, if you compare the two, one is an open circle, one is a closed circle. And we know that closed circles take the value of that point, but open circles do not. So -2, 4 is not a point on my graph, but -2, 1 is. Which means the value of h of -2 then is also +1. For letter C, I'm going to go to x equals 2. I'm going to go up 4 to the parabola. That value is 4. So h of 2 is 4. If you want to pause to try D yourself, you're more than welcome to do so. I'm going to go to x equals 3 on the graph. I'm now at this dot. Notice again there's an open circle and a closed circle. I'm going to pick the one that's a closed circle. Even though it's one single teensy point here, doesn't matter. The value of this point is 3. And so h of 3 is also 3. And then finally the last one, h of 8. You'll notice at x equals 8, you can't really see the graph where it's going to go because the line is here. Well, this line has an arrow, which means it continues on going. So I could try to use the slope to continue this graph. The slope of this is -3, 1. So it goes down 3 over 1 to the right, so therefore it's -3. So I could continue doing this until I get to the number 8, but it goes off the graph. So maybe you can figure it out, maybe you can't. It's not that big of a deal if you can't. I'm going to write the equation of this, and you remember from your Algebra 1 days, the equation of a line is y equals mx plus b. Well, we already discussed that the slope of this line is -3, so I'm going to go ahead and plug that in, y equals -3x plus b. Your job now is to find b, which is your y-intercept. And since this line doesn't continue, you can't just look at the graph because you can't see the y-intercept. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in a point. The point that I'm going to plug in, it really doesn't matter which one you plug in. The one that I'm choosing is it's +4, -1. So that's this point right here. When I do that, I get y is equal to -1 and x equals to 4. This is now a two-step equation, and you can solve for b, and therefore b is equal to 11. I now know that my equation for this line is h of x equals -3x plus 11. That's only for this piece right here. Well, I can now plug in the number 8 here. I'm going to multiply that by -3, -24, plus 11, and it gives you -13. So now we know that h of 8 is equal to -13. All right, for number 2. This time, instead of having the graphs, you have only the functions, the equations themselves. So we'll start with f of x. You'll notice that f of x consists of 3 pieces this time. Piecewise functions can come into several pieces. The first one is a line, so is the second one, and so is the third one. It's over a specified domain. This one is 2x only for when x is bigger than 3. This one is a function x only between 0 and 3 inclusive. And then this one is for x minus 1 only for x is less than 0. So when I'm looking at the number -2, I look to see which domain it falls in. In this case, -2 is less than 0. Therefore, I'm going to use the bottom part of my graph to plug in -2. When I do that, -2 minus 1 is -3. Therefore, f of -2 is -3. If you'd like to pause the video at this point to try the next two, you may do so. For f of 0, when x equals 0, you have a couple of choices. You have this middle one for x, and you have the bottom one for x minus 1. Well, notice the less than or equal to symbol is the one that includes 0 in this middle one. So you would actually plug it into the x. So the one that I'm going to use for this one is x, which means when I plug in 0, I still get out 0. For c, we go to x equals 3. That's still this middle graph here because it's inclusive of 3. And so when I plug 3 into x, you still get out 3. For letter D, J consists of a horizontal line only at one single point 3, so that means I have one single point 5 comma 3 here. And then -2x plus 1 is the rest of it. And so this is actually the same one you just graphed a little while ago, and you already have the graph of this, but we're going to use the function now. Since 3 is not equal to 5, I'm going to use this bottom one, and I'm going to plug in the number -3. I'm sorry, positive 3, sorry. So when I do that, positive 3 times -2 is -6, plus 1 is -5. So my value for j of 3 is -5. And then for this last one, it wants to know what is j of 5. Well, this time x is equal to 5, so you're going to use this top one. And so the value of that y value is 3. So j of 5 is 3. We're actually going to do this bottom part in class together. I'd rather do this with you. And so you can go ahead and stop here. You don't have to do any of the rest of your video. Okay?